Chapter 4. I will do my best to be responsible to my kids rather than for them. Second part. The pressure was on. The book deadline was fast approaching, and I needed to focus on writing and editing. Although the memory of this experience takes me back over 30 years, I recall it vividly. I was right in the middle of editing a chapter when 2-year-old Sean wandered in. "Want to play, Daddy?" As an experienced parent, I should have realized that Sean really only wanted a hug, a pat, and a minute or two to show me the new ball he was carrying. But I was working on an important chapter and felt I didn't even have 2 minutes to spare. "Son, how about a little later?" I replied. "I'm right in the middle of a chapter." Sean didn't know what a chapter was, but he got the message. Daddy was too busy, and he'd have to leave now. He trotted off without complaining, and I returned to my manuscript, but my relief was short-lived. Dottie soon came in and sat down for a little chat. She began, "Honey, Sean just told me you were too busy to play with him. I know that this book is important, but I'd like to point something out." "What is that?" I asked rather impatiently, because now my wife was keeping me from my all-important project. "Josh, I think you have to realize you are always going to have writing to do, and you are always going to have deadlines. Your whole life will be researching and doing projects, but you're not always going to have a 2-year-old son who wants to sit on your lap and ask you questions and show you his new ball." "I think I hear what you're saying," I said, "and you make a lot of sense as usual, but right now I've got to finish this chapter." "All right, Josh, but think about it. You know, if we spend time with our kids now, they will spend time with us later." I did think about it, and the more I thought, the more Dottie's gentle words were like a knife slicing me to the core. She was right. I would always have deadlines to meet, contracts to fulfill, phone calls to answer, people to see, and trips to make. But my children would only be children for a short time, and soon the years would sweep by. Would I have any more time for them next year than I did this year? I knew what the answer would be if I didn't change my ways. Quietly, without any big speeches or fanfare, I made a decision. Ever since, I have tried to place my children ahead of my contracts, deadlines, and the clamor of a world that wants me to get back to them ASAP. For more than 30 years, I have done my best to make my family my number one priority. You can give your kids an American Girl doll, a smartphone, a video game player, new clothes, you name it, but nothing will be more valuable to them than your time. Kids spell love T-I-M-E, time. And when you make yourself available to your kids, it tells them they are important. Let's say you're a good personal friend of the top executive at the company you work at. He's your boss. One Friday, you need to see him on short notice, so you go to his office and ask his assistant if you could talk to him for just a few minutes. The assistant tells you, "I'm sorry, but he's totally booked up until next Tuesday. You'll have to come back." And because you really need to see him now, you tell the assistant, "Look, I won't take much of his time. Please just tell him it's me and I need to see him. It will only take a minute." And then suppose the secretary calls your boss and tells him you're there, and she mentions your name, but all she hears back is, "Have him email me what it's about. I'm really too busy to see him right now, and have him come back next Tuesday." Now, how would you feel? Sure, you can understand the need to meet deadlines and that there's only so much a person can fit in a day, but you would still most likely feel a little shut out and think, "Obviously, I'm not important enough to my boss that he wants to see me." That's how our kids feel when we tell them the equivalent of, "Sorry, come back next Tuesday." It takes time and effort to make your kids feel important, and your time is what your kids need. Dads need to give time to their kids, but it's a certain kind of time that's important. Simply hanging around your kids or having them follow you around isn't the point. What's important is that you enter their world and demonstrate you are interested in who they are and what they're involved in. I remember one dad lamenting to me that spending time with his son didn't work. "He just moped around all day," he said. "My boy didn't seem to enjoy himself at all." "What did you do with him?" I took him golfing with me. Does your boy like to golf? I inquired. No, he doesn't, but I do, he replied. Making yourself available to your kids is about being involved in their lives and being interested in their world. You can't necessarily do that every time you're with your kids, but the more you identify with their world, the more they will connect with you. I've had dads tell me this, Josh, my schedule is just too packed to spend the quantity of time I want with my kids, so what I focus on is a quality time with them. One of the biggest myths going today is the myth of quality time. Of course, we all want quality moments with our kids, but you don't get quality time by appointment or in some kind of tight schedule. You get quality moments by spending larger quantities of time with them. Out of the quantity comes the quality, and we must have both. Another myth we fall victim to is the one that says, it's the big moments that count. You might call them the Disney World experiences, those major excursions that take all day, even all week, and usually cost a lot of money. These big moments might include trips to amusement park, movie theaters, zoo, a ski trip, or an ocean cruise. I used to believe that it was the big moments that counted with my kids, so I would haul them off someplace to show them a good time. Finally, Dottie got through to me in her quiet but laser-accurate way. Honey, it's not the big times they're going to remember. It's the consistent small moments that would mold them, and that's what they're really going to remember. She's right. Put Disney World experiences on your schedule from time to time, but big moments aren't necessary, and they can never replace the consistent little moments of being with them. Do your best to be responsible to make time for your kids, and you'll give them a sense that they are important. Accepting a child for who he or she is without condition is foundational for a secure relationship. Expressing appreciation to a child is the necessary building block that gives him or her a sense of significance. Unconditionally accepting your kids tells them that their being matters. Expressing your appreciation to them says that their doing matters too. It allows them to feel that they are valued and their accomplishments do make a difference to their dad. It conveys the idea, hey, I'm worth something to him. My dad likes having me around and he's proud of me. Appreciation is a solidly biblical principle. When Jesus was baptized, his heavenly Father expressed appreciation by saying, "This is my dearly beloved Son who brings me great joy." Matthew 3. What was the heavenly Father doing? He was expressing appreciation to and for his Son. If God the Father took time to express appreciation for his Son in front of the watching world, we should take time to appreciate our sons and daughters at home or in public. Unfortunately, a lot of kids grow up without receiving appreciation and praise. They eventually learn to become suspicious of compliments, thinking that perhaps they are being set up. Consider trying this exercise with your kids. Stop one of them and say, "Hey, I need to talk to you." "Yeah? Is there something wrong?" he or she may reply. Then say, "No, I just want to tell you what a great job you did," and then spell out what that great job was. You will notice that the more you praise your kids for what they're doing right, the less you have to criticize and discipline them for doing something wrong. That's because praise becomes a motivator for proper behavior. In my early years as a dad, my approach tended toward catching my kids doing something wrong and disciplining them for their misbehavior. As a father, I thought I had an absolute obligation to correct practically everything they did. For example, when I learned that Kelly had gotten straight A's on her report card, I wouldn't interrupt my work to tell her, "Great job!" And by dinner time, I might have forgotten about it. But if I heard that she had clobbered her sister, I would have said indignantly, "Young lady, come in here right now. I need to talk to you." I could give you countless examples of my focusing on negative behavior with my kids in those early days. What I didn't realize was that I was teaching them something I didn't want to communicate at all. The fastest way to get Dad's attention is to do something wrong. Today, as I talk to young people across the country, I estimate that 15 out of 20 kids tell me that is exactly how it is at their house. they can get the attention of dad and other adults much faster if they do something wrong. In the mid-80s, when my kids were all under 11 years old, God spoke to me through All of the Things, a book entitled The 1 Minute Manager. In that book, authors Kenneth Blanchard and Spencer Johnson contended that managers could help their employees set and reach business goals if they applied a principle of catching them doing something right and showing appreciation for their efforts. It was easy to apply the message to my parenting. Instead of seeing my job as a matter of catching my kids do something wrong and correcting them, I learned how to relate to my kids differently. My new motto was, try to catch my kids doing something right and praise them for it. This didn't mean I wasn't going to deal with their misbehavior. It simply meant I wasn't going to outweigh any disciplining efforts many times over by catching them doing something right and praising them for it. It's funny how a little phrase like that can bring a concept or principle to life. I was sold on giving my kids complete acceptance, but I'd been struggling with learning how to appreciate them. One side of me had been trying to accept my children, and the other side had been trying to correct them for things doing wrong. It was no wonder that I often felt like a schizophrenic. But all that changed when I turned the emphasis upside down. Instead of concentrating on what they were doing wrong, I started making a conscious effort to look for what they were doing right. My new goal was to find at least 2 things about each child that I could appreciate every day, and be sure to compliment him or her on what I saw. I'm not sure my kids noticed a change overnight, but I know I did. My whole perspective changed. When I saw Kelly studying, I would try to say, "Honey, I appreciate the way you study." When I saw Sean taking out the trash, I would stop him and say, "Sean, thanks for remembering to take out the trash." And when I caught Katie picking up her toys, I would try to say, "Katie, Daddy really appreciates how you take care of your toys." When Heather was helping her mom clean, I would try to comment, "Heather, you are such a help to Mommy. Thank you for being so helpful." Try this. Gather your family together in the same general area and stand in the middle of all of them for an appreciation session. Think of at least one thing about each person and share it out loud. This exercise will help remind you of just how much you have to be thankful for in your kids, and it will keep you primed for saying appreciative things at the proper time. You see, it isn't a matter of not being able to find things to appreciate about your kids. It's about disciplining yourself to speak up and tell your kids what you see, to give them honest praise for their effort. I talk to dads who have the concept of fathering I used to have, and they say, "Well, kids are supposed to do certain things. Why should they be praised for something as ordinary as taking out the trash?" My response is, "Why not? How do you feel when you are praised for doing your job?" Anyone loves to hear the boss say, "I appreciate the way you handled that project." In the same way, your kids crave to be appreciated for even simple and expected chores. For example, you can say things like, "Thank you for getting your homework done on time," or "I appreciate it when you take your dirty dishes to the sink after we eat," or "Thank you for putting the car in the garage for me without being asked," or "I appreciate you for spending time with your little sister when you wanted to be out with your friends," or "Thanks for mowing the lawn. You did a great job." Having said all this about appreciation, here is a word of caution. Unless your kids are absolutely convinced that you accept them for who they are, your praise and appreciation can become manipulative. Appreciation without acceptance may prompt your child to relate to you on a performance basis, thinking, "If I do a good job, if I get A's, if I score a goal, then my dad will love me." Living on a performance basis will tend to produce feelings of false guilt in your kids. And that's why you need to be sure your kids first feel accepted, then appreciated. For example, when your kids get their report cards, sit down with them and talk about what they achieved. Assure them that, while you appreciate their efforts to earn good grades, you always want them to know, Even if you didn't get A's, I would love you just as much and accept you just the same. Admittedly, there is a fine line to walk here. But the best way to walk that line is to keep the acceptance of your kids as the foundation and build from that with appreciation. Make your children feel so secure and so accepted for who they are that they will know you love them whether they succeed or not. In other words, appreciate your child's efforts more than your child's accomplishments, and appreciate your kid's worth as God's creation even more than your kid's efforts. Do your best to be responsible to express appreciation to your kids, and they will gain a sense of significance. To affirm someone is to validate him or her, or to confirm what he or she feels. When we identify with what our kids feel, we tell them they are real individuals with valid feelings. When we affirm their feelings of excitement or disappointment, we let them know they are understood for who they really are, authentic human beings. What do you do when your child gets angry? You may be quick to jump all over them with something like, "Get a grip, you're way out of line here." Or when your kids get giddy and noisy over a happy event, you may be less concerned about their joy than you are about their being too loud or too careless in their excitement. I have found if a dad moves in to affirm his kids' feelings, he confirms that they are real people who are understood. "Wait a minute, Josh," you may interject. "You can't just let kids vent their feelings all over everybody else. Somebody might get hurt." I agree. I'm talking about affirming our kids' feelings, not giving them permission to vent their feelings any way they like. There's a big difference. Pure emotions are neither right nor wrong, but how a person expresses those emotions can either be right or wrong. The Apostle Paul says, "In your anger, do not sin." Ephesians 4. He's not saying it is sinful to be angry. He's warning us not to express our anger in a sinful way. With our kids, it is okay to affirm what they're feeling while at the same time correcting them if they express those feelings in a wrong way. So how do we affirm our kids' feelings so that they sense they're understood? How do we emotionally connect with our kids as they tumble through the highs and lows of their emotions? Scripture tells us, when others are happy, be happy with them. If they're sad, share their sorrow. Romans 12. While the instruction of Romans 12 is profoundly simple, it is not always that easy. You may be tempted to deal with your kids' behavior or try to fix their problem before affirming their feelings. Resist that temptation. Affirm your children's feelings by feeling with them before you deal with any resulting behavior. If your son is excited over making the team, convey that you're excited with him and for him. If your daughter is disappointed over losing a friend, let her know that you are disappointed with her and for her. If she's upset over a false rumor that was started by a friend, you need to share how sad you are that she hurts. And when you do, your child will feel like a real, authentic person who is being understood. And that will increase the emotional attachment between you and your child. Like I said, this may seem simple, but I found it difficult to put into practice myself. I had to work at it, and you may need to work on it too. Consider these situations. Arriving home from an evening out, your 17-year-old son confesses he got into a fender bender with the family car. How do you respond? Or, your 14-year-old daughter, a B+ student, brings home a report card with 3 C's and a D. What will you say to her? Or, your athletic high school daughter calls you in tears and says she has been cut from the volleyball team by a coach who doesn't like her. What will your first words be? Or, your son comes home with cuts and scratches on his face, admitting he got into a fight with another boy. How will you handle it? These trying situations and countless others like them reflect life as usual in the activity of raising your family. Kids make mistakes, kids have problems, Kids get hurt, kids get into trouble, and kids are victimized by other kids, even by adults. Sometimes these incidents are genuine crises, a life-threatening disease or injury, the breakup of a serious relationship, the death of a friend or relative, and so on. But most of the time, they are the relatively minor disappointments, losses, conflicts, and hurts of everyday life. The critical question is, how do you deal with your kids in the day-to-day difficulties of life? If your first response is to enforce the rules, correct the behavior, or fix the problem, there is no way your kids are going to feel understood. The best thing to do is to first identify with what they are feeling and let them know you feel sad with them. I remember the first time I got a handle on the truth of Romans 12:15. It happened with Dottie. Previously, when she had come to me with a problem she was struggling with, especially one that had caused her hurt, I would try to fix it. I wouldn't address her pain, rather I would address the problem that caused the pain. One day she came home from a meeting at school very hurt over what some mothers had said about one of our kids. In the past, when she shared a problem like that with me, I would leap on the situation and say something like, "Honey, don't let it get to you. Here's what you need to do." Then I would outline a plan to fix the problem. It may have been a good plan, but it didn't address the pain Dottie felt at the moment. But on this particular occasion, I finally got it right. I simply put my arms around her and said, "Honey, I'm so sorry that you had to hear those words, and I hurt for you." That was it. No fix-it plan, no corrective measures outlined, just a heartfelt expression that identified with her pain. Amazingly, it worked. Dottie felt affirmed and understood, and that was all she needed at the moment. A few days later, she came back to me and asked what I thought she could do to address those critical comments about the family member. My fix-it plan was then welcomed. We don't have to understand exactly what our kids or even our wives are going through in order to affirm them. You can affirm someone even when you can't fully appreciate the pain they are going through. In fact, it is counterproductive to indicate you understand their hurt rather than simply hurting that they hurt. A friend of mine found this out the hard way. Once, when his wife was at a very low point emotionally, he, in an effort to help her, said, "Honey, I know just what you're going through." She snapped back angrily and said, "No, you don't. How dare you say you know what I'm going through?" My friend was speechless, but his wife was right. To share in a person's difficulty doesn't mean that we necessarily know what he or she is going through. We can't always participate in another person's unique experience, especially that of our kids. Affirming our kids means that because we know they are hurting, we hurt with them. It means we identify with the one we love who is feeling the pain. My friend should have said, "Honey, what you're going through must be tough, and I want you to know that I hurt because you hurt." That's how we can identify with our kids' difficulties and pain without giving the impression that we know exactly how they feel. Use words similar to these when your kids are struggling and hurting. "What you're going through must really hurt you, and I want to let you know that I hurt with you, and I'll be here for you." Your kids will not only feel your comfort, but they will also experience God's comfort. Paul tells us that God is our merciful Father and the source of all comfort. He comforts us in all our troubles so that we can comfort others, and when others are troubled, we will be able to give them the same comfort God has given us. 2 Corinthians 1. Comfort happens when we follow God's instructions in Romans 12 to share their sorrow. Of course, we can also affirm our kids and give them a sense of authenticity when we follow the instructions of the first part of Romans 12, be happy with those who are happy. When one of your kids gets excited about something, join in with him or her and say something like, "I'm so happy for you. This is so great. I'm so excited that this happened to you. You have every right to be thrilled, and I am too." You can also affirm their feelings through what you do. Happy times sometimes call for celebrations and gifts, but they don't have to be extravagant. Take your young child out for lunch, dinner, or ice cream. Bring him or her a new CD. Allow a special privilege or send an encouraging text. You may not be as excited as your kids are, but if you mirror their joys by being happy with them, they will feel validated, and you will solidify the loving bond between you. Making a commitment to do your best, to be responsible to your kids rather than for them, is critically important. Accept them for who they are, and you will give them a sense of security. Make yourself available and enter their world, and they will gain a sense of importance. Express appreciation, and they will enjoy a sense of significance. Affirm them by identifying with them in their happiness and sadness, and you will give them a sense of authenticity. And hold them accountable for their actions, and you will gift them with a sense of responsibility. End of chapter 4.